Hello, welcome to the Ancient Foundation Bible Fellowship. My name is Shannon, and along with my wife Lyndall, we are part of the Ancient Foundation Bible Fellowship who meet in Port Macquarie, New South Wales, Australia. So if you haven't been with us before, welcome. As our name suggests, we are a fellowship who have gone back to the ancient foundations of our faith and have decided to build our house on those ancient foundations who we believe to be the Messiah, Yeshua, and the Torah. So in these shows, we'll be discussing a wide variety of topics, focusing on the Hebrew language and culture. As it is my opinion, these are the context our Bibles were written in. So, with that being said, today we're going to be talking about the shepherd. It's probably a little bit off the last week's Torah portion, which was Shemot, which started the book of Exodus, and Shemot means the names. So I didn't get to share that last week as I was finishing another little series that we did on Satan, the adversary. So I put it off into this week, but nevertheless, we can still learn a lot because it's the word of Yahweh. Good morning, evening to everyone. Shabbat shalom. It's not Sabbath yet. Shalom, Bronya. Nice to have you with us. If anyone else who's joining with us, don't be afraid to say g'day, as we would say in Australia, or hello in the chat box, and be nice to see where you are, where you're from, who you are. So don't be afraid to say hello. So like I said, we're going to be talking about the shepherd. So as I like to do, if you haven't been with us before, I like to share my screen with you so you can follow along the scriptures. I like to go through a lot of scripture. We want to see what Yahweh says more than what I say. So with that being said, just let me bring up the my screen so you can follow it. Rightio. Here we are. So we're talking about the shepherd. And I think you'll get a lot out of this teaching today. I hope you do anyway. So with that being said, Exodus chapter 3, verse 1. And it says, now Moshe, was tending the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian. And he led the flock to the back of the desert and came to Horeb, the mountain of God, or the mountain of Elohim. So this is obviously after Moses fled Egypt, after he was found out that he had killed one of the Egyptians. So he took off and came across Jethro's daughters at the well. And anyway, long story short, he ended up in Jethro's household, marrying Jethro's eldest daughter, and became a shepherd. And here we have, this is the reason why he's out leading his father-in-law's sheep, feeding them, looking after them, and he ends up at Horeb, the mountain of God. So Moses was tending the flock near Mount Horeb. Now the word tending in this particular verse, I use the New King James, but it's pretty much the same in most English translations, but the others are like feeding. The NAS probably renders it the most accurate with pasturing. So the word tending is more concretely to pasture. So this word in Hebrew, if you look at your screens to me, the word for this pasturing or tending or feeding is the word ro'eh. As you can see on your screens there, it's a resh, an ayin, and a hey. And this is a verb. It's an action. He's pasturing, he's feeding, he's tendering the flock, his father-in-law's flock at Mount Horeb. This is the same three-letter root is used for the word shepherd, because what does a shepherd do? He does the tendering, he does the pasturing, he does the feeding. So we can see why it's the same three-letter root. A shepherd is one who provides and protects the flock and takes desire in them. He loves his flock, he protects his flock. Why? Because they're everything to him. There is income, there is sustenance. And so he takes great desire and protects them and watches over them. So what I like to do from time to time is to go into the pictograph, and we can learn a lot from the pictograph. So this word, this three-letter root, each letter in Hebrew has a meaning. And we can put these meanings together and we get a little bit of a story, and it teaches us about what the word means. So here we have this word Ra'eh in the pictograph. If you look to your screens, we have the head. I think you can see my little mouse around there. The one on the far right is the Resh, which is the picture of a head. The Ayin, which is the picture of an eye, which you can quite clearly see there. And the last one there on the left is the pictograph for the letter Hey. And it's like a man with his hands in the air, like looking and beholding a great sight, or praising God. It's like, wow, hey, praise God. So putting these, each one of these letters has a meaning, and we will combine these meanings, and we'll get a really concrete picture of a shepherd. So here we are. The hey means to behold and look. The Ayin means the eye, and the Resh is the head of man. So we can see those represented in those pictures. So when we combine these together, this means the man who looks and watches, which is what a shepherd does over his flocks and over his herds. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not hard. It's the one who watches. That's exactly what a shepherd does. And we're just going to drill down into this a little bit further. A shepherd closely watches over his flock. So this is what Moshe was doing. He was looking after his father-in-law's sheep. He was watching over them. He was protecting them. He was feeding them. He was leading them. And often the sheep or the herd or whatever they are the shepherd's only companions. As the word shepherd shares the same root, but in the noun form. We've already been a bit over that. The basic meaning of this root, Ra'eh, means to satisfy needs. It's the basic meaning of the root. The etymology of the root is to satisfy needs. That is exactly what a shepherd does. He satisfies the needs of the sheep or the cattle. It's exactly what a good shepherd would do, whether it is shelter, whether it's food or protection. And another interesting thing is one of the another word behind this same root is a teacher. You look at the shepherd; he has his staff or his crook, and he teaches that lamed, which is you can see in the pictograph, which is like a shepherd's crook, or also tied to teaching and instruction. This is where we get the modern day pastor from. Moshe was this person over the flock of his father-in-law. In verse 1, it also says that it was in the desert. But this is just not a very good translation, as the Hebrew word used here is midbar, from the root dober. The original meaning of midbar is not wilderness in the sense of a desolate desert, like the sandy desert. We have deserts here in Australia, and I know that you would in America and Africa, and there's deserts on most continents. There's as far as sandy deserts and very little trees and shrubs. But it's not that sense of the word desert. It means an area suitable for pasturage, which makes sense to me, as one would not take out a flock to feed in a sandy desert. For example, we can find a little bit more about this word wilderness, dobeah, pasturage, there would have been grass there. A shepherd is not going to take his flock into a sandy place where there's nothing to eat. See, wilderness can also be explained as tropical. You know, the forest, you can be out in the wilderness, out in the bush, as we would say here in Australia. Out in the bush there can be trees and grass, but you're in the middle of nowhere. There's no towns, there's no places nearby. You're in the wilderness. It's not necessarily just a sandy place. It can be lots of grass and trees and water and those types of things. It's just a little bit of a shift in mindset. So let's have a look at this example of Doberian in Micah, verses 2 to 12. I will surely assemble all of you, O Jacob. I will surely gather the remnant of Israel. I will put them together like sheep of the fold, like a flock in the midst of their pasture. That's that word there. Pasture is that exact same root word. It doesn't necessarily mean it's not a sandy desert. It's a place of pasture. And they will make a loud noise because of so many people. I really like this verse because it means it's talking about us, the remnant, those who are in Messiah, who are of another fold. And we will be making a lot of noise because there's so many of us. Isn't that exciting? I think it is. We also learn from Exodus 3:1 the principle that many of us may be aware of, and it's the principle first in the natural and then in the spiritual. Moshe learnt the natural principles first of shepherding. He learnt the tending. He learnt the watching. He learnt the protecting and the leading of the flock. He learnt all these principles first in the natural before he had his burning bush experience. Then he had an encounter with Yahweh and became the shepherd eventually of the Father's flock. Moshe was sent to gather the flock, i.e. the people of Israel, out of Egypt. There is also a messianic pattern here of the good shepherd, as we know that there is ultimately one good shepherd who watches, provides, and tends his Father's flock. The good shepherd is gathering the flock. Isn't that exciting? He's gathering his flock. Micah 2:12 is a prophecy of that very thing taking place, which is still going on to this day. Look to your screens with me. Deuteronomy 18:18. I will raise up for them a prophet like you from among their brethren, and will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. Now, this is obviously referencing the Messiah, that he's raising up a prophet like unto Moses or Moshe. What was Moshe? In a sense, he was a leader. He was a shepherd sent to gather the people. Both Peter and Stephen testify in the book of Acts that the prophet is Yeshua. Psalm 118, verses 19 to 29. Open to me the gates of righteousness. I will go through them, and I will praise Yahweh. This is the gate of Yahweh, through which the righteous shall enter. I will praise you, for you have answered me and have become my salvation. Yeshua. The stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. This is a totally messianic passage. This was Yahweh's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes. Verse 24. This is the day Yahweh has made, and we will rejoice and be glad in it. Verse 25. Save now, I pray, O Yahweh, I pray, send now prosperity. Blessed is he who comes in the name of Yahweh. We have blessed you from the house of Yahweh. God is Yahweh, Elohim is Yahweh, and he has given us light. Bind the sacrifices with cords to the horns of the altar. You are my God, and I will praise you. You are my God, and I will exalt you. Oh, give thanks to Yahweh, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. What a beautiful passage explaining who this good shepherd is, the Messiah, and that the righteous will enter through the gates, and this will make a little bit more sense as we continue. Another passage I want to read out. Remember, we were talking about the shepherd and the flock and the sheep. A couple of long passages, but I've got them here so you can follow through them with me. Ezekiel, verses 34, 11 to 31. And it says, thus says Yahweh Elohim, indeed, I myself will search for my sheep and seek them out. How awesome is that? As a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he's coming, As a shepherd seeks out his flock on the day he is among his scattered sheep, so will I seek out my sheep and deliver them from all the places where they were scattered on a cloudy and dark day. Verse 13, and I will bring them out from the peoples and gather them from the countries and will bring them to their own land. I will feed them on the mountains of Israel, in the valleys and in all the inhabited places of the country. So your valleys is where grass is. You can picture the rains coming down from the mountains on the slopes into the valleys, pasture. And in all the inhabited places of the country, verse 14, I will feed them in good pasture, and their fold shall be on the high mountains of Israel. There they shall lie down in a good fold and feed in rich pasture on the mountains of Israel. I will feed my flock, and I will make them lie down, says Yahweh, Elohim. I will seek what was lost and bring back what was driven away, bind up the broken and strengthen what was sick. But I will destroy the fat and the strong and feed them in judgment. Wow. And as for you, O my flock, thus says Yahweh Elohim, behold, I shall judge between sheep and sheep, between rams and goats. That's a pretty significant verse. Is it too little for you to have eaten up the good pasture, that you must tread down with your feet the residue of your pasture, and to have drunk of the clear waters, that you must foul the residue with your feet? And as for my flock, they eat what you have trampled with your feet, and they drink what you have fouled with your feet. Verse 20, therefore, thus says Yahweh Elohim to them, behold, I myself will judge between the fat and the lean sheep, because you have pushed with side and shoulder, butted all the weak ones with your horns, and scattered them abroad. Therefore I will save my flock, and they shall no longer be a prey, and I will judge between sheep and sheep. I will establish one shepherd. I will establish one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them. My servant David, just another way of saying Messiah. He shall feed them and be their shepherd. I am Yahweh. And I, Yahweh, will be their God, and my servant David a prince among them. I, Yahweh, have spoken. Verse 25, I will make a covenant of peace with them, and cause wild beasts to cease from the land, and they will dwell safely in the wilderness or pasture. and sleep in the woods. I will make them and the places all around my hill a blessing, and I will cause showers to come down in their season. There shall be showers of blessing. Then the wilderness of the field shall yield their fruit. See, here we have the trees of the field shall yield their fruit, and the earth shall yield her increase. They shall be safe in their land, and they shall know that I am Yahweh. When I have spoken the bands of their yoke, and when I have broken the bands of their yoke and delivered them from the hand of those who enslaved them. Verse 28, and they shall no longer be a prey for the nations, nor shall beasts of the land devour them, but they shall dwell safely, and no one shall make them afraid. I will raise up for them a garden of renown, and they shall no longer be consumed with hunger in the land, nor bear the shame of the Gentiles any more. Thus they shall know that I, Yahweh, their God, their Elohim, am with them, and they, the house of Israel, are my people, says Yahweh Elohim. You are my flock, the flock of my pasture. You are men, and I am your Elohim, says Yahweh Elohim. Hallelujah. What a powerful passage of scripture. This has only partially come to pass. This is still playing out. Yahweh is doing this in our midst, in our day and hour. How exciting. This is a messianic word of who the shepherd is and what he will do. Friends, you and I live in exciting times. We are part of this flock. We are grafted into the house of Israel. This is what Paul is teaching in Romans 11. We are Israel. We're part of Israel. We're grafted in to the natural tree. Another passage. John 10, 1 to 18. Most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door climbs up some other way. Remember we talked about the righteousness shall go through the gates in that Psalm 118. Here we are. The door and the gate is the same thing. Most assuredly I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door or the gate climbs up some other way, the same is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. This is relating back to Psalm 118. To him the doorkeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he brings out his own sheep, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. Yet they will by no means follow a stranger, but will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. Yeshua used this illustration, but they did not understand the things which he spoke to them. Verse 7, then Yeshua said to them again, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved, and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal, to kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life, and that they may have it more abundantly. I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. But a hireling, he who is not the shepherd, one who does not own the sheep, sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf catches the sheep and scatters them. Friends, there's a lot of hirelings out there at the moment. Verse 13, the hireling flees because he is a hireling and does not care about the sheep. I am the good shepherd, and I know my sheep, and am known by my own. As the Father knows me, even so I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep. And other sheep I have, which are not of this fold, them also I must bring, and they will hear my voice, and there will be one flock and one shepherd. Sounds a bit like Ezekiel to me that we just read out. Therefore, my Father loves me because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself, and I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This command I have received from my Father. Wow. What a couple of powerful passages that we read out. It reminds me of David. Remember, David tended and looked after his father's sheep, and he fought off the lion and the bear. He was willing to lay his life down for his father's sheep. This is what a true shepherd does. This is what a good shepherd does. This is what Moshe would have done for his father-in-law. The Middle Eastern shepherds speak of themselves as a door of the sheep, since they habitually lay down across the entry to a sheepfold, and their body forms a barrier to intruders, whether thieves or wild beasts. See, there's a reason why Yeshua's talking like this, is because this is their life. Shepherds were very, very common in Israel, especially in Yeshua's day. And I've got some pictures here to really tangibly express and show this expression where Yeshua says, I am the door. No one comes in except by through me. And here's a picture. Here's a picture of a sheepfold. Whoop, sorry, I'll bring it up on my screen. There you go. Here is a picture of a sheepfold, and you can see the shepherds laying across the door frame there at the bottom of the screen. This is it gives you an idea of what a good shepherd's there. He's between the wild beast or thieves that would want to come and into the flock. This is what it said. I am the door. I am the doorkeeper. No one comes in except by me. So this shepherd lets in those sheep that are his. What a beautiful picture. Here's another one of a more basic type of sheepfold, and it's made out of sticks and branches and jagged, so it would hold off wild beast. And then you still see the little opening there. It would be common that the shepherd would lay down there and still form that barrier in the sheepfold. He would still form that barrier. So these are a couple of beautiful pictures of why Yeshua is using and explaining the story as he was, that he is that door and he's the one that lets in and out. And here's another one. I just like this picture that he's the good shepherd, and he feeds and tends and protects and looks after the sheep. You see him feeding one there and the other one's laying down next to him. There's peace and shalom, and it's just a beautiful picture, I think, of how he's the good shepherd, and he watches over us and keeps his eye on us. I want to just share a couple of stories now along this theme of the good shepherd. A couple of stories. On this gathering, calling, and leading of the sheep, on the boundless eastern pasture, the shepherd is indispensable. With us, sheep are often left to themselves, especially here in Australia. We just put them in the paddock and they look after themselves. I do not remember to have seen in the east a flock without a shepherd. In such a landscape as Judea, where a day's pasture is thinly scattered over an unfenced tract, covered with delusive paths, still frequented by wild beasts, and rolling into the desert, the man and his character is indispensable. Sometimes we enjoyed our noonday rest beside one of these Judean wells. to which 3 or 4 shepherds come down with their flocks. The flocks mixed with each other, and we wondered how each shepherd would get his own again. But after the watering and the playing were over, the shepherds, one by one, went up the different sides of the valley. And each called out his peculiar call. And the sheep of each drew out of the crowd to their own shepherd. And the flocks passed as orderly as they came in. And this is from the historical geography of the Holy Land. See, this is why Yeshua says, my sheep know my voice. We could be intermingled and with all the different flocks that are around, but when he calls, we hear his voice. And this is a beautiful picture that happens in Israel, and it's common throughout the Middle East. I've got another story that I think you'll enjoy. During the riots, it was in what was called Palestine. In the middle 30s, a village near Haifa was condemned to collective punishment by having its sheep and cattle sequestrated by the government. The inhabitants, however, were permitted to redeem their possessions at a fixed price. Among them was an orphan shepherd boy whose 6 or 8 sheep and goats were all he had in the world for life and work. Somehow he obtained the money for their redemption. He went to the big enclosure where the animals were penned, offering the money to the British sergeant in charge. The NCO told him he was welcome to the requisite number of animals, but ridiculed the idea that he could possibly pick out his little flock from among the confiscated hundreds. The little shepherd thought differently because he knew better, and giving his own call, for he had his neigh, and neigh is a shepherd's pipe, with him, his own separated from the rest of the animals and trotted out after him. I am the good shepherd, and know my sheep, and am known of mine. I wonder what the sergeant thought about that. What a couple of really powerful stories about the culture of the sheep and the shepherd. See, we start to learn why Yeshua is using and describing these stories, because this was common in his day. See, in Australia, we just leave our sheep out in the paddocks and look at them from time to time, but nothing like this. When we as believers hear strange or foreign voices that are contrary to the ways of Yahweh, we should flee. Just like the story we were reading in John, what was it? John chapter 10, I think it was. Yeah, John chapter 10. We should flee. So these foreign voices, these strange shepherds are hirelings. And these are ones that would speak and call out. Let me explain what a strange and foreign voice is. Now, this may be confronting for some. Let's celebrate Christmas. Or it's Easter time. Or it's New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. Let's celebrate these times. Let's have these festivals. Friends, to be quite frank and quite honest, this should be strange to a follower of Yeshua. They are hirelings. They should be strange calls, and we should flee from them. It is a strange shepherd that's calling. one who endorses those days and many, many, many other days. I'm just using some of those as examples. They are strange. Or participating in other days, and there are many, like we see people participating in practices to do with different solstices of the sun, not mixing with other philosophies, religions, or beliefs. Again, this is a strange shepherd, and we are to flee. And there are many famous celebrities out there that peddle the ideology that there are many ways or paths to Yahweh. These are strange shepherds. These people influence hundreds of thousands and even millions of people. They are not talking about the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. As Yeshua himself said, we just read it in John 10, I am the door. There is no one else. There is no other path. There is no other way. There is only one way to the Father, and there is only one way to eternal life, and that is through Yeshua HaMashiach, or Yeshua the Messiah. When the shepherd leads out and calls his sheep, they will hear and follow. How does he lead and how does he call? What's his shepherd's pipe? What's his neigh? What's his particular call? Well, friends, for a person that follows Yahweh correctly or more truthfully, this is what the call sounds like. It is Sabbath. We gather together and follow. It is fast Passover or the other feast days. We follow. We hear the call. We gather together. Or if we're in a restaurant and we have different options to eat, we choose clean foods. We follow. We hear the call. What we do with our money in tithes and offerings, we follow. The way we treat fellow sheep, we follow. So these are all different ways that the true shepherd, the good shepherd, calls. And when he calls, we follow. When reading and studying our scriptures, there is just nothing like getting an understanding of them from a Hebraic perspective. We can learn a lot about attitudes and characteristics from the nature of a Middle Eastern shepherd. How he or she would tend, care, and protect, nourish, and water their flocks. I find this quite interesting, and it's amazing and interesting how the ancient Egypt despised and looked down upon the shepherd, those who followed Yahweh. We know that Egypt is symbolic of the world and its world systems and the authorities of the world. Isn't it interesting how that system despised and found shepherds abominable? Well, friends, if I'm an abominable person in their eyes, so be it. I'm following the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I'm trying to hear the call of my shepherd. I believe nothing has changed. There is still this despising of people who A, want to be led by the good shepherd, and B, who want to have the characteristics of this good shepherd. Nothing new under the sun. Blessed are those who are persecuted for my name's sake. Isn't it interesting how Israel, the house of Jacob, when they went to Egypt, were given the land of Goshen? It was the best of the land of Egypt. It was pasture land. Why? Because they were shepherds. So we see this beautiful picture of the house of Jacob, having the pasture of the land. This is where they dwelt. This is where they lived. Even in a foreign land, Yahweh gave them the pasture. Why? Because they were his flock. They were set apart in that land. Think about that for a minute. Isn't it beautiful? It's powerful. Have a look at your screens with me again. We all know this, one of the most famous Psalms, Psalm 23. May this probably mean a little bit more to you today. Yahweh is my shepherd. I shall not want. See, Yahweh watches over us. He's our provision. He nourishes us. He protects us. He lays at the door of our lives. I mean, think about that for a minute. Yahweh lays at the door. He's watching and protecting you. This is where we get the idea of Yahweh is my refuge. He's my strong tower. He's my shield. These are all protective terms. This is what a shepherd does. Yahweh is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. That's what happens when you and I become born again or followers of Yahweh. He restores our souls. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. What are the paths of righteousness? The Torah, his teachings and instructions. He leads us in those paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Let me put that another way. Your Torah, your teachings and instructions, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup runs over. There's a lot in that idea of the table. I'm going to share on this soon. Verse 6, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever. Friends, I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of that flock. I want to be a part of the flock that doesn't want. The ones that are made to lie down in those green pastures. The ones that are watered. The ones that have a sound mind and a peaceful soul, a redeemed soul, a restored soul. Ones that are following the paths of righteousness. And when we walk through different seasons, when we go through the valley of the shadow of death, when we have these things come, I will fear no evil. Why? Because Yahweh is my protector. Yahweh watches over me. Yahweh keeps me. He comforts me. He prepares a table. Man, I want to be at Yahweh's table. He anoints us and our cup runs over. See, if we're these type of people, there's a promise in verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Yahweh forever. There's a couple of really good songs out there about this particular psalm. I want to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I want to be in that fold. I want to be in his fold. I want him at the door of my life. Hallelujah. Let me finish on this. He is Yahweh Ro'eh. Yahweh, my shepherd. Friends, we're in the season where there's many strange voices being calling out. We're in the season where things are being done in the name of Yahweh that are an abomination against him. I encourage you with everything in me, don't partake of these things. Hear the true shepherd. Follow the true ways of Yahweh. Do not be mixed up in the things of the world. Do not be mixed up in their festive days. Hear the call of your shepherd and flee from these hirelings. Flee from these strangers. And hear the call of Yahweh. Set your heart like flint towards his ways, towards his commandments, towards his teachings and instructions. With that being said, I really hope that this has been a blessing to you, this teaching, and giving you more understanding what these things mean. My goal is in my teachings, is to try and draw you that little bit closer to Yahweh, to help you understand the scriptures that little bit more. So hopefully I've done that to you for you today. And I don't know if I showed you this last picture. There you go. Yahweh Ro'eh. Yahweh is my shepherd. That's what it is in Hebrew. I like this last picture. This is what we want to be, friends. We want to be in that green pasture. We want to be a part of his flock, with him watching over us, providing all our needs. We want to be that flock that doesn't want in a field of prosperity and blessing. That's who we want to be. So with that being said, I really do hope that this has been an encouragement to you and that you've enjoyed this teaching. Again, I would like to thank Mark David Smith and his team for the opportunity to be able to share with you. I encourage you to tune into the Messianic Lamb networks throughout the week and listen to all the other ministries. There's new teachings, there's new shows coming online in the next few weeks. I really encourage you to come in and check them out. I know that they'll be a blessing to you. I hope this teaching has been an encouragement and a blessing to you. I thank you for watching and listening. Until next time, may Yahweh's hand be upon you, and may Yahweh watch over you and protect you and your loved ones. So until next week, shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.